And it's time to look at the front pages of the dailies. Now, let's begin with the newspaper of record. Of course, they say, so take a look at the biggest headline there, screaming headline. Wike, Tinubu saved Fubara by declaring state of emergency. And of course, I wanted him out. That's coming from the Minister of Federal Capital Territory, and of course during his media chat on Friday or so. But let's take a look at some of the riders. Says PDP not ready for 2027, tips president to remain till 2020 or 2031. Fayoshi, I will work against Atiku again. Well, those are some of the riders to that particular headline there. Again, Wike, Tinubu saved Fubara by declaring state of emergency. I wanted him out. That's coming from the Minister of Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike. Well, let's take a look at the other biggest stories here in Easter message. In Easter messages, Tinubu, Jonathan, governors, others preach peace, unity. And let's take a look at the rider. President promises to deliver just, prosperous nation for all Nigerians. That's coming from, of course, the president in his Easter messages there. The Strip, IMF welcomes Nigeria's bold reforms, insists outlook uncertain with low oil prices. They were talking about oil prices, of course. Major oil marketers and, of course, nations are beginning to take decision in respect of the fact that prices are coming down, and that is having an impact on the prices currently. Let's take a look at the rider now. Backs, tight monetary policy, private sector-led growth. CBN, federal government recorded $2.06 billion capital inflow and $2.2 billion trade surplus in January. Well, that's coming from CBN there. Again, IMF welcomes Nigeria's bold reforms, insists outlook uncertain with low oil prices. Perhaps, of course, policymakers are looking at the things right now to see how they can take decisions. Perhaps the upcoming, the next, policy committee meeting will prove what is going on right now. But let's move away from there and take a look at the Punch newspaper. The biggest one there, how CBEX promoters use EFCC CAC certificate to deceive 600,000 investors. Latest update on the story of CBEX, which of course just made away with investors' fund there. Government clearance certificate convinced us. That's coming from investor recounting their ordeal there. Top Nigerians lose money as greed fuels property sales. Well, of course, that's the latest on CBEX collapse there. Let's move away from there and take a look at some other interesting stories there. Let's take a look at this one, which says fresh attacks. Fresh attacks claim 34 lives as new terror group emerges. We hope that perhaps, this latest terrorist group maybe will be nipping the bud. Quite a lot groups emerging there when it comes to in terms of insecurity in Nigeria. But the federal government says it's on top of its game trying to address the insecurity situation in the country. Let's move away from that quickly and look at the next papers here. Let's take a look at the Guardian. The Guardian newspaper is next on my list here. The biggest one here says ahead 2027, why opposition's fortunes appear gloomy. You can get details of that story on pages 8 and 9 of the Guardian newspaper. Well, of course, you can get a picture story speaking there on the front page of the Guardian newspaper. Pick up a copy and get a story there. Again, Tinubu direct military action against forces of evil in Nigeria. That's an assurance coming from the president there. Facilitate Christians on Easter. Over 800 million Africans have no access to cleaner energy. And of course, you can get the details of that story on page 3 of the Guardian newspaper. Armed men attack, injure 3 NDLEA officers in Abuja raid. Well, that's it with the daily. That's much you can take from the daily. But let's head to the Vanguard now. What's the Vanguard saying? The biggest story there, screaming headline, why votes may not count in 2027. That's coming from Buba Galadima, an elder statesman, says most Nigerians are almost giving up. Most Nigerians are almost giving up. Why vote may not count in 2027. Well, you may want to get the details of that particular headline on page 10 of the Vanguard newspaper. Rivers emergency rule. I wanted Fubara's outright removal. That's coming from Wike. Some of the riders, Tinubu saved him with suspension. PDP not ready for 2027. I won't support the party if what? You may want to get it, know what follows afterwards and get, of course, pick up a copy there on page 12. You get the details there. Atiku doesn't keep to his words. That's coming from Wike's following, of course, emergence, following his media chat there. This isn't leadership, it's cowardice. Well, Air Peace suspends Enugu operation, cite safety concerns. Nigeria's economic outlook marked by significant uncertainty. Well, that's coming from IMF there. Similar story, you may say. Well, that's what we have with the Vanguard newspaper. But let's proceed now outside Nigeria. Let's start, of course, with the Guardian UK and take a look at what's saying there. The Guardian UK has these particular headlines on the front page. Teachers warn of surge in racism, misogyny. You can get the details of that when you pick up a copy. U.S. is ready to abandon peace deal in Ukraine, says Rubio. Secretary of State says U.S. will move on from effort to broker a deal within days unless there is progress. Perhaps before that day elapsed, there might be progress in terms of brokering peace deals when it comes to ceasefire within Russia and, of course, Ukraine. Reeves to press for trade deal during trip to Washington. Well, that's all we have with the Guardian newspaper. Let's move on now as we take a look at some other story here. Daily Mail is next on my list. Bin strike unions iron grip over Labour minister. Reveal 28 of Starmer's team belong to militant Unite. A quarter of Kate Starmer. That's what the story says. It's a quarter of Kate Starmer's ministers belong to the militant union behind the Birmingham bin strikes crisis, and it can be revealed according to a story there. Exclusive interview. Kemi, my cousin killed himself after going down internet rabbit hole. Well, that's coming from Kemi Badenoch there. But this particular one, the Mail's a kind of teaser is this one. Mail's 25,000 pounds Easter brain teaser. No, a lucky winner may have to go home this Easter to celebrate with 25,000 pounds there. Let's move away from that quickly. The Time is next on my list. As we run through some of the papers quickly, UN refugee body backs return hubs for migrant. That's the biggest story on the Times today. Let's move away to take a look at the weekend. Mortgage price war set to start. Lenders cut rate with more on the horizon. Well, several lenders, of course, including HSBC and, of course, Santander's have cut rate in recent days with, NatWest expected to join them on Tuesday and others to follow suit. Well, banks were able to reduce prices as a combination of Trump's tariffs plan and Wike. So quite a lot is happening around the global, in terms of decision when it comes to policies and how nations are taking their stand against, U.S. tariff across the globe. That's all we have with, of course, on weekend. But let's take one more before we wrap up. The Daily Telegraph is next. Reeves, it is foolish to cut our ties with China. Well, that's coming, well, from the, Chancellor, which taking a stand against Donald Trump's attempt to isolate Beijing there. Well, of course, that's much we can take from the dailies this morning on Daybreak. Well, that's all we have for you on Daybreak.